sorrow over the waters, like the Spirit of God of creation. The dove, finding land and safety, returns to the starting point, closing the circle of its flight. The raven does not return, but continues its mission, searching out the broken places of a ruined earth with no guarantee of safe harbor. The raven faces the world as it is, Let them soar to your heart, O God, as we say together prayer in the words our Savior taught us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil.
have direct ties to these communities. Grace is the supply pastor currently at the Community Church of Keyport, and Amanda, if you would stand for a moment. Amanda is one of our 4 members in the serving as well from Reformed Church of Highland Park. We have another member of Reformed Church of Highland Park that will be officially brought in as a member of the serving shortly, and we have another seeking relationships. So it's an exciting time to be in these ecumenical relationships. So today, we reached out, or the association reached out, to see, since we were talking about ecumenical matters, if we could have the title is Ecumenical and Interfaith Relations Manager. And this individual does that for the entire denomination. One of his predecessors was a person, I believe, by the name of Reverend Dr. Karen Georgia Thompson. So I'm not saying that it's a given. You might want to get his autograph. I have known Mark for a number of years. I was in Southern California Nevada conference, and shortly after I arrived, Mark arrived at Manhattan Beach Church, served with distinction there, has a passion and a commitment to the life of our local churches. So today's presentation about what it means to be ecumenical in this day and age isn't just a presentation of the head, a series of dates, etc. It's really how this material touches and changes our churches on an everyday basis. So with that, it is my distinct honor and privilege to introduce our featured speaker today. He'll talk about 25-30 minutes, and then we'll open it to question and answer. Reverend Mark Pesavino.
The Restore Do List. I like that. That seems a church roof for $3,000. That is a deal. All right. Let's see. Let's see if that sits right there and doesn't fall off horribly. All right. We'll call it that. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. It is a pleasure to be with you this morning. I'm actually going to make one correction. You find on websites tend to track a little behind decisions sometimes. My title now, and for the last couple of years, has been Ecumenical and Interfaith Relations Minister. I had a conversation with our now General Minister and President before she moved into that role when she was supervising me as an Associate General Minister. And she said, "What do you think about your job description?" It was during an annual review. I said, the job description looks great. She said, "What do you think about your job title?" I said, "I hate it." She said, "Why?" I said, "Because manager makes me feel and sound like a bureaucrat. Minister feels a little more like a calling. And I'm sure there are managers out there who are called to be managers, but I was not one of them. And so we agreed that we would shift the title. So I'm the Ecumenical and Interfaith Relations Minister of the United Church of Christ. I serve in the Love of Service unit, and it is, we recently, after Reverend Dr. Thompson was elected, we made some shifts in how we look at how we structure ourselves. And I believe she spoke last week at the Central Atlantic Conference, so some of you probably heard her speak. And so if there was a moment to have a definitive word on the ecumenical stand of the United Church of Christ, that she would be the one to offer that. I serve with her, and it is an honor to do so. And it is wonderful to be with you all this morning. I came from the National Council of Churches Christian Unity Gathering and Governing Board meeting in Nashville, Tennessee this week. And I flew from Nashville to here. And so it's always interesting to talk about ecumenism coming from a gathering that is an ecumenical gathering in itself. And then I come into this space and I learn of all of your connections to different denominations through ordination and through churches that are dually affiliated and all these things. And it's kind of like a continuation of being in Nashville this week. And it's wonderful to see. So when I talked to Craig originally, he said, what does ecumenism look like today, and what's it going to look like in the future? And that's just a fun question to answer these days. I would love to say that I have a clear idea of what it will look like in the future, but we just don't know where things are with our churches. We have denominations. We're in such a time in the life of denominations that the future is just uncertain. And I think we've felt that way for a while now. My role in the national setting as ecumenical and interfaith relations minister is to interface with the denominations with whom we have relationships, either mission and ministry relationships like the Alliance of Baptists or TFAM, or denominations with whom we have full communion relationships, like, for instance, through the Formula Agreement. Of course, you are probably aware, with the Reformed Church in America, Evangelical Church of America, the Presbyterian Church USA, and the UCC. That relationship is now, I think, 27 years old, and was groundbreaking at its time. We also have an even longer standing relationship with the Christian Church Disciples of Christ in the United States and Canada. And with the Disciples of Christ, we do jointly our global ministries work, which is something as well, very impressive thing in the ecumenical world. And we also, our most recent full communion agreement is with the United Church of Canada. So it's our first full communion agreement outside of the bounds of the United States, but still solidly on the North American continent. We will be bringing resolutions next year to Synod related to what will be developing more formal relationships with the Protestant Church in Germany, which the acronym is EKD, and I don't do German well. We've had a relationship, as probably some of your congregations are aware, and your association and conference are aware, with the Uniting Church in Germany, which is the UEK. That body was subsumed into the EKD in the last year or so. And so we are formalizing our relationship with the broader Protestant Church in Germany. The relationship we've had with UEK, it's the one German word I know, Kirchengemeinschaft, which is a great word. My 10-year-old loves that word, and he says it with such gusto when he gets to say it. But it refers to church unity. And then the other resolution that we'll be bringing forward is a resolution with the Iglesia Evangélica Unida de Puerto Rico. You may be aware that the IEUPR, I'm going to start using acronyms instead of those things, was a conference of the United Church of Christ that actually joined the United Church of Christ with everyone who joined at the merger back in the very late 50s, early 60s. And so that was a conference of the UCC until about 2006-07, when it separated and became an independent denomination. And we were tasked in 2019 by Synod to explore the closest possible relationship with IAUPR. And so we'll be bringing a resolution to Synod next year to affirm that relationship as well. And these two relationships, reflect more formality with denominations outside of the United States and off of the continent, which is hopefully a sign of future relationships. As a united and uniting denomination, it is something that we want to do, is to formalize our relationships with other denominations around the world, because we have commonality in Christ and we have commonality in mission. And it's important for us in this time, we think about it in the United States, but across the world, in this time of divisiveness, it's so important for us to affirm commonalities and to show how we can come together around something. And so we hope to be able to, those resolutions will pass next year, and we'll start moving in those directions as well. So that's a little bit, so I interact with those denominations. I also interact with the ecumenical bodies around the country and then around the world. I think I did a count not too far back, and I think I serve on 12 boards, which, you know, I'm not gonna lie. When I went into ministry, I didn't think to myself, you know what? My goal is to serve on at least a dozen boards simultaneously. But it's interesting, and each of these organizations that the United Church of Christ deals with have interesting missions, but I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So that's my role as far as ecumenism goes, and I also do similar work with interreligious, interfaith bodies as well. So you know the history probably pretty well about the United Church of Christ and its history of ecumenism, right? You know that we are, one of the great things about the United Church of Christ is we are, I was talking to someone earlier, and a statistic I heard this week again, and I've heard it before, is that there are 35,000 Christian denominations around the world. And almost all of them are the result of split. The United Church of Christ represents something different. It represents one of those rare occasions where a new denomination came to be because of people coming together in unity. And we know the story. 5 streams came together and created the United Church of Christ, and they agreed to it in 1950, and in 1957, all the court cases that the Congregationalists brought forward were dealt with, and they could actually merge, because Congregationalists are wonderful. And have strong opinions. Not that ENR folks don't, or Afro-Christian, everyone does, but. And so we came to be, and there was this sense of, it's a Christian unity movement, and it's the middle of the 20th century, and everyone's excited, and people were tired. And people saw how hard it was to do this. And we were at a time when suspicion of institutions was on the rise. You know, you have Vietnam, you have things like that, and all of that just kind of petered out. And instead, we started to focus in our attentions on conciliar bodies of ecumenical bodies that come together, and also finding ways to become full communion partners. And so again, something I'm quite proud of with the United Church of Christ is that the United Church of Christ again demonstrated kind of groundbreaking work and came to this relationship with the Christian Church Disciples of Christ and said, we're going to do global ministries together. Global ministries, I don't know if you know this, but it is not. It's not a separate entity. It doesn't exist as a corporate entity, global ministries. Global ministries is a partnership. So half of the folks who work for Global Ministries are employees of the United Church of Christ, and half of them are employees of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, and half of them work in Cleveland, and half of them work in Indianapolis, and we do the work together. And we've been committed to that for, I think, more than 30 years now. And then, of course, the Formula of Agreement, another groundbreaking moment where we had come together as churches into this ecumenical body, Churches Uniting in Christ, and the goal of Churches Uniting in Christ was to focus on racial justice. There were 10 denominations that came together, focus on racial justice and move toward full communion relationships. And in that expression, the Lutheran ELCA, which was not part of CUIC but was an observer, decided to move forward with us as the Reformed denominations in CUIC, so PCUSA, RCA, and United Church of Christ. And the 4 of us came together in the Formula of Agreement as full communion partners. It is the largest expression of full communion partnership that came out of that effort. And again, we're 27 years in, and it's not always been an easy relationship. There have been times when we've been on different ends of issues, and what's been interesting is over that 27-year period, who was on the extreme has changed from a time when we as the United Church of Christ were moving forward, having become an open and affirming denomination in 1982, that was a point of contention with the other three. Over time, that has shifted. But what has been important is that we have all stayed at the table together. Because not talking is, in my opinion, more problematic than disagreeing. And so we've done that, and we've done a nice job with that. So these are the things that this is the history we live in, and we've been living in. My first experience, I was a volunteer. My first experience with this work for the UCC was as a volunteer, and I attended the Reformed Church in America Synod in 2012, 2013, and 2015. It was an eye-opening experience. Having gone to many general synods of the UCC, going to this, and it was a different experience. Things were just done differently. I was just wowed by everyone who got up to speak to an overture, and there were a lot of people who got up to speak to overtures. Everyone who started off with a scriptural reference to ground their point. And I don't know if you've ever been to a UCC General Synod, but we don't have that tradition so much. Once in a while, scripture's thrown out there during a debate, but I found it refreshing. I also found it as a wonderful example of how scripture can mean very different things to different people. But those experiences kind of brought me to better understand and appreciate this relationship we've had. So that's where we've been. And where are we today? We are in a time where we have seen dramatic decline in the numbers in mainline Protestant denominations. We're at a time in this moment where we've witnessed, I don't want to call it schism, but there have been some substantial splits lately. You're aware of the United Methodist Church and what they have experienced as a global body. You're also probably well aware of what happened with the Reformed Church in America. I was at the synod where the decision was made to open the door to allow churches that wanted to depart to do so. And since that time, I believe it's about 25% of the congregations have left, and which represents about 47% of the population of the denomination. So the denomination is in the process of kind of restructuring, reconfiguring, figuring out what it looks like today. And as ecumenical partners, we walk with. And we lend our support as we can, and we recognize that things are going to just look different moving forward. It's a time. And these are examples of what's happening. We've seen a dramatic shift in Christianity over the past, 50 years in terms of what does Christianity look like? There was a time when North America and Western Europe could, and, population-wise, justifiably, were kind of leading the way. But that's not what global Christianity looks like anymore. Where we see growth is we see growth in the global south, and the theological perspectives are different around the world, and our ecumenical bodies have struggled to reflect that, and to not only reflect theological perspectives, but also to reflect leadership appropriately. And I think that's part of what we saw happening in the UMC, in the Methodist Church. That was part of the issue moving forward, was that the United Methodist Church grew dramatically in the global south, and the denominational, as an institution, didn't necessarily reflect those changes. And so today I was actually privileged to be present at the United Methodist General Conference this summer. And I will tell you that while there is sadness at loss, there was also a spirit of excitement to be able to move forward in new ways as a smaller body, but a body that could agree more on direction and ideals. So it's a shifting landscape in the ecumenical world. I'll be preaching tomorrow at Reformed Church in Highland Park, and Seth and I had a conversation. And one of my, I came into this position, and one of the neat things about being a newer person is that you don't necessarily know what's going on in the room, or at least you can be perceived as not necessarily knowing what's going on in the room. And so you ask questions. And it's just been amazing to me to watch ecumenical bodies. And, I live in a world of alphabet soup. We've got the National Council of Churches, the NCC. I've got the Christians Uniting in Christ, COIC. I've got Christian Churches Together, CCT. We've got the World Council of Churches, WCC, World Communion of Reformed Churches, WCRC, the Caribbean and North American Regional Area Council of the World Communion of Reformed Churches, CANIC. Every profession has this, right? Every profession has its acronyms. And the thing that perplexes me still today is we have these bodies, and the ecumenical officers, we're a pretty stable group right now, and we tend to be in all of these different rooms, and they all serve on these 12 boards with me. I'm on in these rooms with the same people, and we go to a different room and we talk about the thing we were talking about in the other room last week, and at no point is there a conversation about how this group works with this group on the same issue, even though 80% of the people in the room were in this room as well. And then you go to another one, it's the same thing. So racial justice, for instance. Everybody's working on racial justice and doing important ministry. But no one's talking. And it makes no sense. In a world of declining resources, it makes no sense. In a world where all we see is greater division, when we look out into the popular culture, it makes no sense that we're not finding more ways to demonstrate unity, visible unity. One of the bodies I sit with is the Christian Churches Together, and Christian Churches Together is we have every group has its description, and Christian Churches Together is the broadest table. Because at Christian Churches Together, we have representatives of 5 different Christian families, is what we're called. You have the mainline Protestant family. You have the historic Black church family. You have the Orthodox family. You have the Catholic family. And you have the Evangelical and Pentecostal family. Catholics and Evangelical Pentecostal are not members anywhere else. At CCT, they're members. So you have these 5 families. And so the idea is this exists, and they say it's great because it exists, and it's a visible model of Christian unity. And we were in Memphis 2 weeks ago for the CCT forum, and I don't disagree that's an important thing. But my question was, but who knows? Because we're a model of Christian unity to what end? To say we got into a room together? Okay, that's meaningful in this day and age. But who knows? Did you know that Christian Churches Together existed? And who was part of it? Part of that's on me, because this is the first time I'm telling you. But simultaneously, it's been intriguing because at the end of every forum each year, and they meet every year, there's a time for discussion about putting out a statement or doing a leading action. And for the last 3 years, we haven't been able to agree on anything. 2 years ago, we tried to do a prayer. Couldn't agree on a prayer, not because we couldn't agree on the content. We couldn't agree on how to end it. Part of the room wanted to say Amen and Ashe, and part of the room said, we will say amen, we will not say ashe. So we didn't do a prayer. We wrote a prayer, and then we didn't do anything with the prayer because we couldn't agree on how to end it. I mean, it's intriguing to me that we find ways into spaces, but we are not finding the ways to do the work that needs to be done with others. And I'm always intrigued by it because I feel like we see the same thing happening in denominational settings. That we have full communion partnerships, and we know that they're vital and alive because of ministerial exchange. And that's great. But what else? You know, the United Church of Christ, the Reformed Church in America, the Presbyterian Church USA, and the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America are all doing work around racial justice. But we're not doing it together. You know, we've got, we had a conversation of the heads of communion of those churches, and we talked about racial justice being we're all doing this. And then we said also, all of us are struggling to assist our rural and small churches because our churches are all shifting to being more small church dominant. And how do we equip them? How do we make sure they have clergy? How do we do all these things? We said, this is a common issue. And so, what? It is a dramatic failure of our work together that we aren't finding more ways to do things together. And part of the problem is we are not learning from other settings of our church. We're not learning from our conferences. The Heartland Conference, the conference minister of the Heartland Conference, David Long Higgins, and the regional minister of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ in Ohio, Alan Harris, are very close friends. And everything they do in the state of Ohio, they do together. If they have an idea of doing a program, they do it together. If they're going to plant a church, they're going to do it together. We don't look at our associations where we have a demonstration of a cross-section of denominational representation doing work together, like here. We don't look at congregations. Congregations who have said, we have limited resources, and so we're going to do this mission work with this other church in town or this other organization in town. We're going to work with, and we're going to serve the people of our community in this way by working together because we can actually accomplish our mission better. And as a side benefit, we can demonstrate Christian unity. And when people say, what's that look like? We say, well, it's that feeding program. It's that housing program for homeless individuals in the winter. And so I feel like we get caught up, and I'm part of it, I think, is the confessional piece here. We get caught up in our brand. We get caught up. My spouse was at the Central Atlantic Conference meeting last week. Her name is Elena Larson. She's one of our philanthropy officers for the UCC. And so I understand the importance of philanthropy. I celebrate the work, especially the manner with we're doing philanthropy in the UCC these days. It's because it's cooperative with conferences and associations and congregations. But I think we get caught up on worrying too much about saying, this is what we're doing. We need to put our name on it so everyone knows this is what we're doing so that someone will support it. And we see that in congregations at times. We see that in our denominations, and we see that in our ecumenical bodies. We get caught up worrying. I think it was in 2012, Phyllis Tickle sent the word, the Great Emergence, and talked about the 500-year yard sale and how we were kind of moving into a time of post-denominationalism. Well, we've all been part of congregations that have been declining. And we've all been part of other organizations that have been declining. And we know that organizations hold on like grim death to not go away. And so I don't think it is accurate to say we're moving into a time of post-denominationalism, because our denominations aren't gonna let go. But they have to adapt in this time, in this moment. We have to work more together. We have to learn from other settings of the church. We have to really, John 17, we love it. We throw it out there all the time. It's a great scripture. We need to do more than speak unity. We need to live unity by having united missions in what we're doing. We don't have to agree theologically. It's actually okay if we worship on a Sunday to Sunday basis in different congregations, in different places. That's fine. But if we all believe in the mission that Christ is calling us to, we've got to find ways to make it happen, and that means we have to do it together. We have to do it across ecumenical, denominational bounds, on every level. And that, so I think when I think about like what's the future of ecumenism? What does ecumenism look like today? First, it doesn't look just like ecumenism. It looks a lot more like interfaith work. We see that in our state councils of churches, many of which have shifted to being interfaith councils rather than state councils of churches. We see that locally. When I was serving at the church in Manhattan Beach, my closest clergy colleague and the congregation we were closest to in town was the synagogue. It's just what things look like today. It's the reality of a world. And if we believe in a call to unity, it can't just be Christian unity. It has to be unity among all God's people. So I think that's part of what it looks like. I think we also have to look at the fact that our churches today reflect something different than what I think we're used to, and that's that we see a growing presence of multiple religious belonging in our churches, and that's a good thing. We learn from others, and the idea, and part of it is it's almost naive of me to say it's something new, because the reality is in throughout the world where we have the presence of indigenous faith traditions and Christianity found its way in, multiple religious belonging has been a reality. We did a webinar 2-3 weeks ago, and one of our presenters, it was about multiple religious belonging, one of our presenters was Trinidad and Tobago. And she just talked about, that's just it. The entire culture is that. Because you have so many faith traditions all in one place, and they intermingle all the time. You want to talk about visible unity of God's people. That's amazing. That's amazing. So I think that's a big piece. And then, we need to continue our, developing these relationships with other denominations and push ourselves further and further. There are united and uniting churches around the world, and that's great, but, there are denominations. Did you know, can anyone tell me, just for fun, little quiz here for you. The United Church of Christ has congregations that are dually affiliated or yoked congregations with many different denominations, right? Can you tell me which denomination we have the most with?
In New Jersey, ABC.
So ABC in New Jersey. Okay, so I'm talking denomination-wide. Just throw out some guesses there. Presbyterians, okay. Disciples of Christ, okay. Lutheran? Okay. American Baptist, we have a relationship with that. The denomination with whom we have the most is the Methodists. We are not full communion partners with the Methodists. Maybe that's a pathway. Finding new relationships, exploring new relationships, and then being intentional in those relationships to do work together. I think that's where we are today. That's where we have to keep going. So that's what I offer you. Thank you.
So we have a time for question and answer, and I want to kick this off because I can leave you for a better segue. So as the Associate Conference Minister that travels to our churches, one of the greatest challenges I have, especially when it comes to church positions on social issues, is the media does not seem to understand our calling. When our General Synod gathers, for instance, and we establish a position, the media treats us like the United Methodist Church.
Sure.
And in the Methodist Church, when the denomination votes, all of their churches are in that position. But in the United Church of Christ, you'll see a headline that says UCC votes, or UCC says this about Israel or Palestine. But we are a fundamentally different tradition. We're a tradition where Synod speaks to, but not for, the church. So it's interesting having lots of those relationships. How can we help cultivate a better understanding so that especially our clergy and moderators, aren't on these roller coasters, when people come forward and say, what's up with the United Church of Christ? We did, as if we're wrong. Could you speak to that?
Oh, gosh. Well, I think being at association and conference meetings is important. I think whenever someone from, in particular, the national setting is in front of you, letting us know. Getting on General Synod delegations is really important. I mean, in my life before ministry in California, I was somewhat politically involved, fairly politically involved. And I would attend Democratic conventions every year. And I always found the Democratic Convention in California really interesting because it was a representation of an extreme. The further left Democrats went to the Democratic Convention. General Synod tends to kind of have one face like that. And I don't know that General Synod always reflects the United Church of Christ as closely. I mean, Craig, and my wife also ordained clergy in the UCC. She and I both served churches in the LA area simultaneously. Elena served First Congregational of Long Beach, which I always describe as kind of the poster child for the UCC. First Congregational Long Beach is 40% out LGBTQ, activist congregation. They've been activists for 50 years. Women's rights, LGBTQ rights, racial justice issues, everything. If there's something to march for, First Congregational Long Beach is going to march. And so kind of a poster child. In fact, at one point when you looked up the UCC on Wikipedia, it was actually a picture of First Congregational Long Beach. My church, Manhattan Beach, was more reflective of the average UCC church, which is politically diverse, pretty darn white. Just look more like the average. But Synod looks a lot more like First Congregational Long Beach because that's who gets excited to go. And I think what's important is that synods start to more accurately reflect the full life of the church. I don't think it's going to change positions that synod takes at all dramatically, but I think all the voices need to be heard there. And I think that's a big piece of it is we operate, unfortunately, in the various settings of the church in silos. The national setting is doing what the national setting does. Because of our polity, we kind of feel justified doing it, right? We're like, well, we know that it doesn't actually. But at the same time, I've served a congregation. I know what it means when the UCC takes a position and people come to you and say, so this is what your church thinks. and trying to explain to them, it's one setting of our church. No one gets that. It doesn't work. But I think being present and having, and speaking into spaces when you have an opportunity.
We have time for 2 or 3 questions. If you could come forward.
Craig, could you use that mic's not coming through on the, use that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Testing.
Yeah, that'll work.
I actually have 2 questions. The first is, do you think that with the split in the United Methodist Church now, there might be more opportunities for discussions about unity with the UCC, or at least coming closer together? And the second question is, do you see generational change with younger folks being more open to being more ecumenical, more interfaith?
I would say yes to both. With the UMC, I've actually had some they have 2 people who are kind of in the role I'm in, and one of them deals with bilateral, one denominational, one deals with the conciliar bodies, and I've had a conversation with the person who deals with bilateral and said, what would this look like? What would this process look like? I've made no commitments because I don't get to make those commitments without some sign-off from others. But our impression is it would not be a difficult process. You think about polity-wise, we've got relationship with the Lutherans, and so we've had a conversation about bishops, which is what freaks everybody. Oh my gosh, this church has bishops. Yeah, okay. Our conference ministers kind of get a kick out of it when they get referred to as bishop, so it's okay. But yeah, I think that's a likely conversation in the not too distant future. And I think as far as young people, I think I experience a couple different things. One, yes, very interested in ecumenism. With one of my conciliar bodies, Churches Uniting in Christ, we have started an ecumenical institute to work on ecumenical faith formation, and we have a group of 11 or 12 from 7 denominations who meet monthly online and came together in Cleveland for 2 days. So I think there's an interest in ecumenism. I think there are, I think a lot of the young people that I've experienced today who have chosen a denomination are pretty dedicated to that denomination because they've made that choice. They know they live in a world where they have options. If they go to seminaries, there are many options usually of where you're going to land. And so when they've chosen a denomination, they've done so for important reasons. And so there's a dedication to that denomination. Simultaneously, partly because of seminary experiences, but also because of the call to unity that I think they feel in their hearts, that there is a dedication to ecumenism as well.
Other questions, Seth?
Dave. Greg, there's a question from online as well.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead and bring it on.
Hello? All right. This is from Jack, Reverend Jack, online. Given that so many young people, especially the generations coming up, are not that interested in denominations but are seeking spiritual connection, given that our God doesn't prefer one path over another, is there any value in establishing meaningful, constructive, and forward-thinking relationships with other faith groups?
Okay, yes. I think there is. I think that's important. I think that, again, we're looking at things like multiple religious belonging, but also just we live in a history that has so often claimed one thing above all else. One faith, one. You can believe this and nothing else. You can practice this way and no way else. And it's important for us to demonstrate something different. Simultaneously, I want to say, and this is informed from time in the local congregation, but also in the current role, is it's also really important for us to be well-grounded in our own traditions. When we go into conversations and dialogue or engagement with other faith traditions, if we are not well-grounded in our own tradition, we're not bringing anything into the space. You know, so often we go in, and I think it's a thing about, you know, I've experienced in the UCC, working in ecumenical spaces, that we're a little less willing to be, you know, deeply grounded in our UCC-ness going into an ecumenical space. We often put all the work on other people and say, teach us, tell us, you know, add to our experience, but we don't really have much to give to you. And so I think we have to, yes, be in those spaces, but we have to bring the fullness of who we are into those spaces. Because otherwise, we're doing a disservice to the others.
First, to thank you. This is the first I think I've heard the term multiple religious belonging, and it's extremely helpful. Obviously, I had the theme in my mind, but to have a word for it, multiple religious belonging, that is transformative. So that's a gift. Thank you. My question has to do, you know, I'm kind of disturbed, as you shared, to hear about how many spaces, ecumenical spaces, moving from room to room. And I'm wondering if there are examples where praxis is the driver instead of rooms. You know, liberation theology to me is and a great example in this country is the civil rights movement gave birth to incredible interfaith and ecumenical work, not because people sat around talking about interfaith or ecumenical work, but because they were marching, starting with their feet. And eventually you get to those spaces. That's the response to praxis, right? First you act and then you respond. So I'm wondering if any of these spaces where you are talking are looking at how do we start with our feet and then get to our reflection.
So first, let me give you another phrase to kind of match you with multiple religious belonging: religious pluralism. We kind of go like that. And actually, our current general minister and president wrote a chapter in a text about multiple religious belonging. She actually did her Doctor of Ministry work at Seattle on that. So there's more to learn.
I like that phrase better than both.
Yeah. As far as, you know, I think one thing I will say, and I appreciate the opportunity to come to this as well, is so we ecumenical officers last year, ahead of one of those meetings in Rome, got together in a different room in the same town to have a conversation about this particular frustration that we're bouncing from place to place. And from that, a conversation that happens every 3 months or so of the leadership of the conciliar bodies coming together in one space to say, here's what we're working on, how can we complement one another? We're not to the point of all sharing the same mission for it, but how can we complement it? So ecumenical faith formation. COIC was starting to work on this, and not long after, the National Council of Churches said, we're going to start working on ecumenical faith formation. We said, oh my gosh, no. Don't start, because first you're going to ask us all to come help you do it. Secondly, you're going to ask us all to find you people, and we're already kind of doing this for CUIC. And third, why would we all do this separately? And so there's actual conversation happening about how do we do this together, recognizing the void that there is right now in that realm, and also recognizing that ecumenical faith formation also has to have an interfaith aspect to it today, or the young people today have no interest in it whatsoever. But coming together and finding that, I think we've identified those areas of greatest concern. So racial justice work, that faith formation piece as a practical piece of something we're all starting to move into, and why not move into it, at least in conversation. Like different denominations have different charisms, maybe. These organizations have different, focal points as well. And so their existence is fine and wonderful. But being cooperative, finding ways to work together, finding ways to not duplicate effort, but to do the important work. And I think there's work starting to be done that way. We saw a lot this last summer. The National Council of Churches did a big thing about voting, and did a 60-year anniversary of Freedom Summer tour. And they have invited in resources from all the different denominations to then share them all in an effective way, and being a clearinghouse. So I think there might be movement in that direction. I'm hoping, but we still need to see more.
We have time for one last question, and so it will be from the president of the consistory of this church.
Thanks again for being here today. I have a question, a little more, less kind of ecumenical stuff. You talked about declining membership and doing a little research. I think that's across the country, across denominations. Do you have any thoughts or ideas on kind of using these partnerships with other denominations to help membership, membership drops, income drops? I'm sure we're not the only church with those challenges here today. So any thoughts or ideas on how to kind of use those partnerships to try and bring more people in?
Well, I have one opinion about membership growth, and I'm not sure. I mean, I think the partnerships can be part of it. When I served a local church, I got there and I had a member who said, "Oh, we need to do a membership drive," and I said, "I don't, no." And he said, "What are you going to do? How are we going to get people in?" I said, "The reality is there are a lot of people in the world, and a lot of people in the world looking for meaning, and a lot of people in the world who identify as Christian, who are looking for meaning, who are not coming into church doors. I believe that churches that are growing are churches that have a clear sense of identity and mission, have a willingness to have an ability to articulate that identity and mission, are willing to do so publicly, and then do it and live it. So know who you are and why you are. Be able to explain it somehow. Be willing to say it out loud, because in mainline and progressive Christianity for many years, evangelism was like, whoa, we don't do that. And I'm not saying go door to door, but be willing to find ways to amplify that publicly, and then do that. Because the biggest complaint about churches is hypocrisy. That we say this, but we are this. Or we say we do this, but we don't really do it. And so if you get all the way to that point of being able to say who you are and willing to do it, and then when people show up and when people see you in the community doing that and being that, then people will come and stay. And I think the partnerships are a big part of that, because if one of the things we claim is unity and a dedication to unity, one of the things we have to do is actually have those partnerships so that people see that unity happening. I don't think there's a magical formula. I think that, in the UCC, there's been a long time when most of the churches in our denomination that have been growing are open and affirming churches. Yes, I think that's a big part of it, but also open and affirming is an incredible statement of identity. And if we're able to say this is who we are and then we demonstrate it, then it accomplishes that goal.
So I want to give you all a chance to stretch your legs a little bit. It's been a little while together. We're going to convene again promptly at 11, and from 11 to about 11:35, we're just going to give you some updates and information on the life of the association to take back home. We'll have speak outs, and then we get some grub. So, and I think Mark will be around if follow-up questions. See you at 11. And if you didn't get a name tag when you first came in, we have them on the table so you can grab them. Those of you in the sanctuary ignore me. This is a test for Zoom. Can those on Zoom indicate whether they can hear this microphone? If you can, type yes. Okay, thank you, Zoom family.
Yeah, right underneath it. Okay. I'm sorry, I did not recognize. Oh, no, you're fine. First time we've met in person,
Testing? Excellent. All right, we are committed to wrapping up by 11:45 or 11:50, so I'll invite you back, and I'll invite Roberto and Yuli up front. I think it'll be 10 minutes to the okay. All right, even though we are not conducting business today, we have a registrar's report. We have 42 people in person. We had about another 14 register online. It's almost a beautiful 50-50 split. 22 are ordained or authorized, 20 are lay. So that's beautiful. And we have 20 of our 42 active congregations represented. So give yourselves a hand. So we're going to be talking in about 10 minutes, chunks of time to get us updated. The first are our co-chairs for church and ministry to bring us updates about our ordained or authorized ministers, as well as any local church matters as well. Yuli and Roberto.
As Craig said, we are the co-chairs of church and ministry. My name is Yuli. I'm the pastor at Packanack Community Church in Wayne, and my co-chair is...
I am Roberto Foy. I currently pastor the Trinity Presbyterian Church in East Brunswick.
And we are excited to present to you and also just we want you all to know that church and ministry, we're really working hard to build relationships with all of you, both clergy and congregations, and please know that we are always available if you do not have our emails, we can give them to you, but please reach out with any exciting news, any troubles you're having, or just for support in general. We are here for all of you. So let us begin. The first thing is a very exciting announcement, and that is for all of you authorized ministers or members in discernment, you should have received an email on last Tuesday inviting you to fill out the annual information review. Now, we have not done this since pre-pandemic, so this is technically something that we all need to fill out in order to keep our standing within the association and the denomination. If you have not received it and you are authorized minister or member in discernment, please let us know so we can make sure you can get it. If you do not like filling out email or online forms, you can get a hard copy as well. But this is one of the many ways to keep in covenant with each other and the denomination as a whole. So if you have any questions about that, it does not take long to fill out, but it is very important that you fill this out, and then every year you get to do it again. So it's very exciting. Yes.
On September 29, the Reverend Robin Bacon Hoffman began the next stage of her life in ministry as she began her retirement. We celebrate that today. Robin's ministry was grounded in strong ecumenical commitment. During her life, she was part of Roman Catholic, Lutheran, Presbyterian, and UCC congregations. As Robin reflected in her ministry profile, however, she's firmly planted in the United Church of Christ. Her ministry called her in several directions. She did extensive pulpit supply throughout our association, led continuing education workshop at Rutgers, and chaired Biomedical Ethics Committee. She worked as an interim minister in more than one occasion and led conflict resolution workshops. Robin spent the last 5 years of her ministry serving as pastor at Rosemore Community Church in Monroe. Our association has been touched in numerous occasions and ways by Robin's gifts. We are grateful for her ministry with us and wish her the best as she begins her retirement.
Robin had health issues, so she was unable to be with us today, but she's with us in spirit.
We do have a few departures to announce to you. In September, Reverend Jeff Mansfield had his last Sunday at Glenridge Congregational Church. And currently, they have a bridge pastor, Rusty Eidman Hicks, who is here and serving as their bridge pastor. So we lift up Jeff's ministry and hold the congregation in our prayers as they go through this transition. Homedale Community UCC, their interim minister will be leaving on December 8th. And their search committee is working hard and continue to keep them in our prayers as they continue their search and work in this transition. We lift up Reverend McRail and all the work that she did with Homedale and continue to keep her in our prayers as she moves on to her next ministry setting. We also share that Reverend George Reiser Jr., I believe it was in the spring, moved on from Holy Trinity, and we'll hear more about that community shortly. So we again lift up his ministry with Holy Trinity. And last, we share that James Vespuli, who was serving Panther Valley Ecumenical Church in Hackettstown, his last Sunday was October 13th. So being an ecumenical congregation, the Episcopalian Diocese of Newark will be carrying the congregation through the next search, and we keep all of them in our prayers as well.
And as Craig indicated earlier, as many of our churches are served by ministers that have come to us through either the formula of agreement or some other means, I am happy to announce that Holy Trinity is currently being served by the Reverend Robert Wedge, who is a retired United Methodist Church minister. We also have some of our own serving churches outside of the denomination, especially worthy of mention is the Reverend Marie Bakioki, who's been recently installed at Old Brick Reformed Church in Marlborough. The Reverend Judy Fiocco at Absecon Presbyterian Church in Absecon. This is a PCUSA congregation, and myself, as I mentioned, serving Trinity Presbyterian Church in East Brunswick. And that would conclude our report.
But just one thing I forgot, and to remind you once again about the annual information review, it is due on November 1st. So remember that those are sent out. Reach out if you didn't receive one, and please return them by the 1st. All right? Thank you very much.
In just a moment, I will invite Reverend Dr. Kirk Johnson to share the conference report. There's just a couple matters I would share relating to the life of the local churches. We currently have 5 congregations of our 42 in search. That includes Glenridge. They're looking for an interim. Homedale is continuing their search. They have moved along well, but that's a 3/4 time setup position. Maple Shade is meeting this week to entertain a candidate and a call. It might happen by November. Panther Valley Ecumenical Church. Just for a little bit background, this is our most ecumenical church officially. It has ties to 4 denominations: Episcopalian, the United Methodist, Presbyterian Church USA, and UCC. They rotate pastors, so this time it is the Episcopal tradition's opportunity to lead the search, so they will be driving that. And the last is Rossmore Community Church. This is in their bylaws, defined as a non-denominational church affiliated with the United Church of Christ, and they have a bridge pastor from the PCUSA. We do have 2 churches that have either recently ceased or within the next month will be stopping services. The Federated Church of Livingston, they took the summer off and have not come back, so they will be selling their property most likely next year. The other church is First Congregational Church of Woodbridge. This is their 150th anniversary year, but they are unable to continue, and they anticipate ceasing services by November 1. So that's the church and ministry update from both the association and conference level. With that, Kirk, I would invite you to come forward and he will speak. We have 4 representatives from New Jersey in the conference board. Jack Kafari, Reverend Jack Kafari, Reverend Roberto Foy, Reverend Sushama Austin Connor, and our 4th is Reverend Dr. Kirk Johnson, so he'll give the report.
Good morning, everyone. As Reverend Peterson said, I'm the Reverend Dr. Kirk Johnson, pastor of Christ Congregation in Princeton. Also have greetings as a Central Atlantic Conference board member. So we really had a wonderful 60th anniversary annual meeting last week at St. John's Grace in Cantonsville. If you were there, I hope you were blessed by the gathering. And if you were not, you missed a good time according to the feedback we received to date. And if you were there and you haven't filled out the particular survey, please do so as soon as you can. I know both surveys, the one that Reverend Bartolon talked about, as well as the survey I'm talking about regarding the Central Atlantic Conference, is in our emails we receive periodically, the New Jersey one, as well as our Central Atlantic Conference. So please, I know sometimes I glance over them, guilty as charged, but go back. I'm sure if you see the link, please take time to fill that out. We are also exploring in the Central Atlantic Conference for the next year. The best time to schedule the annual meeting, I know that sometimes there's a lot of conflicts. We're all very busy. So again, please fill that out so we could accommodate, if not all of us, the majority of us, so we could participate. Also understanding that October can be challenging, both because of many events that time of year for adults, and also challenging for children and youth attendance because of school. So again, please fill out that survey. I know the survey went out on Thursday, asking for your feedback this past Thursday, and other particular options. I know that Thursday, October 24th was the due date, but I believe we're extending it to November 1st. And your feedback will be critical in our planning, and again, thank you in advance for your attention to the survey. Also, a few updates here. So in July of this year, our board had a retreat in Lincoln, Maryland. During that retreat, as an addendum of sort to the conference strategic plan adopted in 2020, we identified 4 areas of focus for the conference in the next 1 to 2 years. And these are the top 4. Number 1, social justice. Number 2, children and youth ministry. Number 3, covenantal relationships. And number 4, development or fundraising. Working with the consultant, we are conveying a subgroup to work with our board, conference ministry team, and stakeholders across the conference to help us address and meet our challenges in these areas. Second point, the board will also be working on reorganizing its structure of working groups in the next year. Our working groups are open to non-members, so please encourage your lay members, your congregational members to participate, to be non-members of the board who would have interest in or expertise in areas such as finance, human resources, leadership, and governance, and congregational vitality. So we all know folks that are lawyers, that have worked in administration. If you think they're a good fit, please reach out to them, and hopefully they'll be willing to join our board. The more, the merrier. If you'd like to participate, and if you like more information about these particular positions, you could talk to me afterwards or go to our website, and we do have a website, cacucc.org. Again, that's cacucc.org. Our last particular point, our board has made a concerted effort to be at association meetings, both to reiterate the board's commitment to supporting local churches and also to recruit board members. Some of you might remember that Elder Bobby Faison, our board president, attended our spring association meeting at Union Congregational Church in Montclair, New Jersey, our last previous meeting that we had. Our association is well represented by board members, which were mentioned, Deborah Duke, who serves as secretary, Jack Kufari from First Congregational Church in Haworth, and Shushama Austin Connor from Christ Congregation, of course, in Princeton, and of course, Reverend Roberto Foy as well, as a member of Christ Church in Summit, New Jersey. So while we are represented from this association, there is always room for more. If you have any interest on the board, please either, again, contact me or our wonderful Associate Conference Minister, Craig Peterson. We are faithful and joyful and fruitful in our time together in the ministry we do. And if you're interested in being a member, we will be glad to really spur that interest. Our CAC board remains deeply committed to serving the Central Atlantic Conference and furthering our mission to support and uplift churches like ours, clergy, and communities. So thank you for your trust that you place in us and in the CAC, and on behalf of the CAC Board of Directors, we'd like to continue this work, not just by ourselves, but with you. So please keep us in our prayers. Again, thank you so much for your attention and your time, and may God bless you all. Thank you.
From a conference congregational development perspective, I just want to highlight a couple things before we get to our council president and treasurer. So we are at a historic moment in the life of the United Church of Christ. In the first 67 years, we have had documents or things to guide our authorized ministers, but we have never had a document to guide the life of a local church. Think about that, 67 years without. So this year, a draft of a document called the Manual on Local Church has been released. It is on the denomination's website, so if you Google UCC Manual on Church, not only can you read it, but you can send in comments through December 31. The comments will be incorporated and it will be brought to General Synod next July 11th through 15th for adoption. This spells out things like congregational codes. So for instance, how is it that we know if the local church is living in covenantal relationship? It spells out, just like ministers have 8 marks for faithful and effective ministry, it will spell out 8 marks of faithful and vital congregations that they can use to help evaluate their own ministries. It is truly a historic moment, and it's a moment that anyone can get involved in by reading and commenting on that document. I can't emphasize it enough. On Sunday, November 3rd, I will do a Zoom for the New Jersey and Chesapeake associations to walk you through the document in some detail, and that'll be posted in our newsletters as well as the website. Secondly, we are acutely aware that there is an overwhelming shortage of authorized ministers, which means more and more of our local churches, when an authorized minister leaves, may go anywhere from 6 to 24 to 30 months before they can have an authorized minister. So we are stepping into that painful reality by offering at the conference level lay worship leader training. It is in conjunction with Marcia McPhee. We think it's an awful bind to put our local churches in to say, well, if you can't find a pastor, I guess you gotta close. We're getting creative and working with local churches. For the churches who are larger and thriving, your members could go from your worship teams and learn in ways that can benefit you and your pastor. My most fervent prayer, going back to this notion of covenant, is that some of our larger churches may identify lay worship leaders who could then go out and offer pulpit supply in our churches who are without a pastor. It's a way that we live covenant with each other. So that's, the conference paid a flat fee. All of our churches can send as many as they like, and it's taped recordings that are made available. I know that James DeBoer is part of a congregation that brought like 8 or 9 congregants to it. So if you're interested in that, James is in the back there. Let's see James. We have kicked off our ambassador program, which is primarily targeting lay people, because the painful reality is the only person who's representing the United Church of Christ Sunday mornings is me, which means I can only physically get to a congregation once or maybe twice a year. So, for instance, the first participant from First Congregational Church of Westfield, Heather Lewis Mills, she was able to go on a Sunday when I was at Grace UCC in Flemington and represent the association in Monroe at Rossmore. If you'd like to be a part of that and being there for pivotal moments of each other's lives in ministry, please contact me. Want to do a quick shout out to a couple of our clergy. Our denomination, in recognition of the shortage of clergy, and especially the declining numbers of those below the age of 40, several years ago created a program called Next Generation Leadership Initiative. We have had several folks from our association participate. Our co-chair of Church of Ministry, Yuli Bertolon, is one of those. What's really exciting is, in this association, 2 of our last 3 calls fit the criterion for the program, and both of those individuals, Reverend Dr. Kendall Moore from Presskill, Reverend Dr. Kirk Johnson, have been chosen to participate, and they will be joining the program, I think, this upcoming week in Memphis for training. So Jersey is becoming a destination. We are finding the best and the brightest of the clergy, and so congratulations, gentlemen, on that. I'm going to say one last thing before I invite a guest up to conclude the report. In my work with local churches, because so many of us are ecumenical, there's a tremendous lack of knowledge about how to financially contribute or support the denomination. So I wanted just to keep it really short, and I'll use a story. We have basically 3 ways in the United Church of Christ that we give. The first is called special offerings, and we have 4 of them every year for a different cause. Now here's the thing, because one of our local churches said, on this report it indicated we didn't give. Well, we gave $1,000. Well, what they had given to was a special offering. Special offerings do not go to the denomination. One of the beauties of that is the denominational structure supports it, but things like 1 great hour of sharing, strengthening the church, they all go directly to programs or services. So not a dime of those special offerings go to support the structure. The second is per capita giving. Per capita giving goes to this association, and it stays here. And it has a formula, which is basically $7 for every member of your church. And if you haven't updated your membership rolls for a while, it's always a good chance to do so, because that formula of giving is linked to your reported number of members. And that money is sent to the association. The association is in a degree of flux right now. We have closed the office, which you'll hear about more. So if you or your church secretary needs to know where to send the check, it will go to our treasurer, but I can get you the mailing address. So that's the second. And the third and final level of giving is called OCWM. Officially, it stands for Our Church's Wider Mission. Many local churches say it means our church wants money. That's the joke. But 85% of those dollars that are sent to the conference stay in the conference. 85%. They pay salaries, they provide programs, that sort of thing. 15% of every dollar goes on to national. So I wanted to make that really clear. We have special offerings that go to causes. We have per capita giving that goes to the association and should be mailed to the association, because we have some churches that send it to national, and it takes months to get that. And then the third level is our church's wider mission. So I just wanted to clarify, because I had that question from several churches. So the last thing I wanted to do from a program perspective, in May, when we were together at Union, we pitched the notion that Jersey is committed to adding a different piece to the function of an association. We don't want to just authorize or have oversight of ministry. We want to actually participate in revitalization. So one of the ways we've already started doing this in the last 6 months is one of our interim clergy here in this association teaches a certificate course at Memphis Theological Seminary. And she came to the association and said, I would offer a community engagement that's New Jersey and UCC specific for 10 individuals. The association felt like it was a good opportunity to invest, so the association covered 50% of the tuition, and the individual and local churches covered the rest. Reverend Annie Allen, will you come forward and just for a couple minutes talk about what's happening?
Thank you. I said I have 4 points and 3 minutes to cover, so I will do that. I am delighted that Craig is participating in the certificate program, and I want to thank Rusty. Where's Rusty? I want to thank Rusty. I want to thank Bill for their support in helping to get together a small cohort of churches, and we have Trinity Collegiate. Ursula's back there. There's Ursula from Trinity Collegiate in Plainfield. We have Craig, of course. We have 3 people from my congregation, the Rutherford Congregational Church. We have a clergy member, Jacob Backus from First Congregational of Verona, and Janice Ball who's working with Rusty, at Glenridge Congregational. And the certificate program comprises of 4 mini courses. Begins with theological foundation. Why do we do what we do? Why are we called to work in community? And that's a wonderful course, because not only do we talk about biblical examples, but also some sages like Martin Luther King Jr. and we do a piece on liberation theology and so on and so on. Then we go into asset-based community development, building on what's strong and not what's wrong within our local communities, and all sorts of ways of connecting and collaborating with them. There's a whole unit on that at the end. And then there's a piece on facilitative leadership where we learn to connect with and build relationships with others and build organizations that are democratic, where all voices are heard. So this entire certificate program is designed for working clergy. So we build it around the liturgical calendar, so we end before Thanksgiving, and we don't start up again until the end of January. And it's built for working adults. We have more lay leaders than clergy members, and that is really, I believe, right in line with what the conference is going for. I also wanted to just give you some real basics real fast about some of the basic principles of why we feel that authentic, real community engagement, partnerships in our communities are really the way to go. We all know we have been far too internally focused as congregations. And so the first and foremost principle is that we live in a world of abundance. And if we step outside of our sanctuaries, we will see how God is moving and shaking and living in the lives of people in our communities. In my community in particular, we partner with our senior center. We partner with the Center for Hope and Safety. We partner with Urban Promise. We partner with all of these different organizations, with the Chamber of Commerce, with our local business community. All of these people are contributing to the health and well-being of our neighborhoods. There was a time when the churches were the center of community. That's just not the reality out there. However, we still have associational relationships with our Boys and Girls Clubs, with our recovery programs, with our homeless programs, with all of the life of the community. And in doing so, we regain that space as being integral parts of the communities where God has planted us, and it is really faith-based. So I'm going to stop here because I'll talk about it all day long. But I'm hoping that the association, that we can build another cohort. One of the things we didn't do this time around is we only worked by email, and we've really got to get better at communicating with each other, because I think we would have more churches involved in it. But it has really been a joy to do this work with the association. So God bless you all. Thank you. You won't see me often inside the church, but I am walking up and down Main Street in Rutherford. You can see me anywhere in town.
Speaks directly to what Mark had said about growth and being in action. Our goal shouldn't be just to get them in our walls, but rather get the folks in our walls out into the community. So we have 10 more minutes before we get to speak outs, and I will invite Rusty forward and Bill, and they will, Andy, you gave us a great segue about communication. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to see you here. 20 churches, 42 people. I've been in the New Jersey Association 35 years, going to association meetings constantly, and I discovered, I used to think, oh God, another association meeting, but I missed them during the pandemic. I missed everyone getting together, and so I thank you all for coming out today. I'm now the president of the New Jersey Association thank you. You can call me Your Excellency. And I came in because I was really asked to step in because things seemed to be kind of difficult. I think it's Leonard Cohen who said the cracks are what let the light come in, something like that. And I think we've had some cracks that have happened. One, of course, was the pandemic, which was just so difficult. And so many churches were really hurting. And I really commend the association. This was before my time. I've only been in this position about 4 or 5 months. But the association council and the commissions really stepped up to help our churches and give donations and really kind of open the coffers somewhat to help the churches. And I really commend the association for doing that. Another crack that we're facing is that we discovered that for the past 4 years or so, a lot of records were not really being kept as faithfully as we had hoped. Beth Pugh had, of course, we'd gotten used to having Beth Pugh around. She was in there for decades as our administrator and registrar. And so we figured Beth does all this, and realized that during the pandemic and other things, a lot of this had fallen apart. We have had an administrator who was only working part-time and then less part-time, and it turned out that a lot of the records are just iffy, and of course records are very, very important for our commissions. Our main work of the association is the Preordination Commission and the Church and Ministry Commissions, both of which really need faithful record keeping to document all of the what the clergy are doing, the churches and the members in discernment. We are now in the process of pulling those together, but we also, a lot of this, the changes that have happened came when we organized a group to do a search for a new administrator. Our previous administrator and we parted ways, and we were looking for a new administrator and sat down at the first meeting going, do we really need to hire somebody? Because we realized that supervision was a big issue, communications and other things, and we realized that as a volunteer organization from all over the state, meeting on Zoom, it's very difficult to really supervise and have an employee and train an employee. And so we decided to do what the 4 other associations in the conference have done, which is to allow the Central Atlantic Conference office to really administer our record keeping. And so we decided to do that. We have sent our files actually packed up, thanks to Ina, all of our files and moved them to the CAC office. And we're also finding on computers and other things a lot of the records that need to be done. So just wanted to let you know that's something that's been happening. But we're things have fallen through the cracks, but we are gathering ourselves back and reforming. And I think sometimes when there are cracks in the wall, then we can see better. So, and that's my hope for the future. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Matt, can you, perfect. Okay, Bill Taylor, Treasurer for the New Jersey Association, member of Grace UCC. I'm going to start with the good news, which is we're in a very good position. Moving forward, I see no concerns financially as far as the association goes. I put together, this is not a financial report because this is our spring meeting. Our business meeting, as you know, this is our fall meeting. Our business meeting is the spring meeting. So I will give you all that. But I thought I would share some information about how things are going. You remember we have everybody in our various churches, I have 46 of them, pay per capita fees the way Craig had described it. Our budget for this calendar year was $28,500. If you look there, year to date so far, we've gotten $28,597. Fantastic. And we may get a few people who pay toward the end of the year, but we're really good on that. Now, when I set the budget up at $28,500, which you guys all approved, I thought it was aggressive. If you look on the sheet here, you can see in 2021, per capita fees were $36,000, then they were $28,000, last year they were $26,000. You could think that, well, the progression is to go down, but thank you all. The people who had not paid the year before, they came back online, and we are where we are. So, ready? Operating expenses, the budget for this year was $16,790. Now, the first bunch of numbers are all calendar year. This is a fiscal year number. Our fiscal year, remember, we changed the fiscal year to start July 1st, go to June 30th. So this fiscal year, the budget for the fiscal year is $16,790. So far, we've only had a few months in the fiscal year. We spent $6,562. The number that we spent last year was $22,000. So why do we have a budget of $16,790 when last year we spent $22,000? It's because we no longer have that employee. And I'm hoping that the shift from that will save us quite a bit of money. As a matter of fact, of our budget of $16,790, $14,000 of it is going to the CAC. We don't really have a lot of other expenses. You know, we have to pay our, give me an example, Bill. We have to pay our Zoom. We have to pay our Zoom costs. There's some small things we have to pay, but most of the money is that we're going to be making is going to be going to the CAC. I have a pretty good feeling on that, so it is unlikely that we will have any big deviations from our operating income. Which brings the thing I like to talk about the most, which is our mission support. The budget for the mission support was $12,500. Now think about this. This is pretty clear. If we're budgeting $16,700 for operating expenses and $12,500 for mission support, that would bring us close to a balanced budget if we're budgeting $28,500. The idea was to get us in balance from that point of view. Now, so I expect of the $28,500 that's donated, we would spend about $12,500 on mission things. We've only spent $1,500 so far, and that's all related to Ann there, Reverend Ann, excuse me, and we've got some more coming. Last fiscal year, we spent $21,521. I like that number. I like that number. Ready? I like that number. So how do we, if we spent $21,500 last year and we're only budgeting for $12,500, what's going to happen, Bill? Are we going to start turning down things? No, the answer is we get investment income off our mission expenses. We get investment income off our mission funds. We have 4 mission funds that throw off investment income that can only be used for missions. I budgeted $13,000 for that. Last year, in 2023, you can see we got $13,092. I have no idea what investment income is going to come off, but I figure it's about to be about the same as last year. So far, which is only one quarter, we've gotten $3,625. So that looks to be about right. So if you look at it, if we get $3,000 in investment income from our mission funds, and we generate $12,500 from our per capita fees, that'll give us $25,000. Got it? Does that make sense? Now, I'll give you the breakdown. I am not a gatekeeper. I'm not here to turn people down. Everybody says that. I think if you have a chance to deal with me, you will find out that I try my best to make every request get fulfilled. Sometimes it's just too big, but I try never to just turn somebody away. I give them as much as I can, even if I can't give them all they really want. Here is, I shouldn't say I obviously, it's council that basically approves these. I have to make the pitch. I'm always in the positive pitch mode. We can. We just got to figure out how to do it. So I thought I'd give you some idea of where the $21,521 that we spent last fiscal year came from. There it is. We are helping each other. The idea is we are member churches. If one of our churches needs help, the association should try to help it. So there's a list of it. And that's it. Is that clear?
Especially as a former Methodist with my method approach. 1141, we have about...
I forgot something. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I am in the UCC.
People ask me what did I lose sleep over. I lose sleep over the fact that I may have to be treasurer of this place forever. If anybody wants this job, please put your hand up. I'd even be willing to be your bookkeeper. So I'm willing to keep doing the background stuff. But if you're willing to stand up and have the title treasurer, go to the meetings and speak as treasurer, express your financial acumen to people, I'd rather give all that up. I'll do all the work in the background for you. Anything to get me out of 100%. Thank you. Okay, now.
one last formal announcement, then we have time for about 45 second speak outs until somewhere between 11:50 and 11:55, and then lunch. We're getting in the tradition of announcing the next association meeting in advance, so you can plan 6 months ahead. Because no matter when you try to schedule it in May, people will say, I have a graduation, I have a wedding, I have, etc. The next meeting will be May 17 at the Community Church of Cedar Grove. We're trying to alternate between Northern New Jersey and Central. So it'll be Community Church of Cedar Grove. Reverend Sarah Welsh Pomerantz will be our host and the congregation. And that's May 17, same time, 9:30 to noon, with registration starting at 9. Does anyone have, and I smile as I say does, because I know people have, an announcement ready to go up to 45 seconds, so.
Hi, I'm Reverend Julie Yarbrough from Christ Church, and I'm delighted to announce the launch of a new nonprofit called ESHN, which stands for Equitable Solutions for Housing in New Jersey. We are an affordable housing corporation. We're going to be developing smaller projects of 2 to 20 units in Essex, Union, and Morris County of affordable housing. So if you or anybody in your congregation is passionate about affordable housing and would like to join us in this effort, either with the nuts and bolts work that needs to be done to launch a new nonprofit or serving on the board, please see me. Thank you. And I forgot to say that I want to shout out to Reverend Seth Copperdale. I think he's already gone, but he and his organization, the Reformed Church of Highland Park Affordable Housing Corporation, have been really helpful, and we're kind of modeling what we're doing after them.
Love that. All right.
Those of you who've been around for more than a few years know that Rutgers Protestant Campus Ministries is very dear to my heart. And we're trying to regroup after a time of COVID decimating us. And Kirk is nodding because Kirk guided us through that period. Our current and new chaplain is Reverend Matt Murphy, who's up there with the soundboard. Working very, very closely with Reverend Scott Russell, serving the young people and the staff and faculty of Rutgers, New Brunswick. You've probably gotten the letters, you're going to get emails, but if you have questions, talk to Matt or me, and check out our Facebook, Are You Spiritual? Rutgers Protestant Campus Ministries. We need your spiritual as well as your financial support. Thank you.
Reverend James DeBoer, I am one of the co-coordinators of the Social Justice and Witness Task Force. Reverend Craig knew I had something, and he was correct. There is an organization that we are connected with called Sweep New Jersey that advocates, among many other things, for the rights of transgender people in the state. And I recently received an email that the Township of Edison voted to repeal something called Policy 5756, which offered guidance regarding treatment of transgender students, consistent with the law against discrimination and consistent with affirming people and supporting their rights. But the township repealed that policy on first reading, so now there's going to be a second reading, and there's a call for people of faith to come out and support the policy, in other words, oppose the repeal on second reading on the 29th. The evening of the 29th, there is a board meeting at Edison, and you don't have to live in Edison to go, but to just show your support would be quite important. So please come and find me, and I can share the details.
That policy is being attacked in several boards of education. The Homedale Church was particularly active in trying to oppose that, but keep your eyes open because as the associate conference minister that looks at the whole state, it's board of ed after board of ed after board of ed. It's like dominoes. So our local churches really need that presence. Yeah.
This is a different shout out. My name is Dan Lundquist. I've been around the association for about 30 years. I don't know when my retirement's going to be. I know Robin Bacon Hoffman from Christ Congregation. But I also want to shout out to Rusty because I guess he came out of retirement, is what I wanted to say. And so, Rusty, thank you for coming out of retirement and showing us the way. That's all I want to say.
Don Pope from Homedale UCC. This is not an association announcement, but it's relevant, I believe. Tomorrow is the Red Bank Church World Services Crop Walk. It is the third largest crop walk in the United States. Last year they raised $115,000 and 45,000 pounds of food. Homedale UCC has got a big team. I'm responsible for monitoring the monitors at the crosswalks. If you'd like to donate to any of our walkers, check our website out, and there's a link to the Church World Services crop walk. So thank you.
Any others? Well, with that, let's take a moment and we'll do the blessing of the food, which will also buy the host site a little time for. Are they ready for us?
Yeah, they're probably ready.
Yes, all right. Let's take a moment and have a blessing of sending as well as eating as well. Gracious God, we give thanks for the opportunity to have this time together in ministry, to catch up on what has been, to reflect on what is, and to think about what will and could be. We give thanks especially this day for the multiplicity of denominations and traditions that form us and help make us who we are. We give thanks now in particular for the blessings of the food that will be on the table, for those who have shipped and prepared and done so in such loving ways. We give thanks. May that food and the fellowship on which we feast strengthen us on our journey of becoming the individuals and the church that you would have us be. We ask this in the name of the one who inspires and challenges us always to be our best. In his name we pray. Amen. And Matt, instructions for how to get to the fellowship hall and the lunch.
Yeah, we do have another church that meets in here on Saturday afternoons, and so they can come in and set up in here. But our hall is directly behind the altar, so if you go outside and go that way, you'll see the big school buildings and playground in the front. And we're in the basement part of that. There's a side entrance right behind my shed that's back here. So you'll see the side. There's also handicap accessible ramps in the back, go all the way around back, you can see. Yeah, so come join for lunch. Our folks have prepared a nice little spread, so come over, eat, fellowship, we'd love to have you there.